Hi, everyone. I'm Joseph Ungoco, Worshipful Master of Beach City's Masonic Lodge in Manhattan Beach for 2021. And my guest today is Worshipful Rob Ray, who was Worshipful Master in 2016. Worshipful Rob, tell us how you came to Masonry. Like, how did you choose Masonry? Were you a legacy?
Um, Apparently I didn't know. My grandfather was actually a California Mason. I didn't find that out till after I was past master. I originally joined Masonry. I had a friend of mine that I played in a band in college. He was the drummer for the band I was in, and we've always been really close. And I went to go visit him one time because his band was playing, and he wanted me to come out and play with them. And so we were just hanging out, and he showed me this plaque that he had, this giant framed thing. He was like, "Oh, check this out." And I was like, "What's that?" He's like, "Oh, I'm a master mason." I'm like, "I don't know what that means." he's like, "No, I joined the lodge." Like, I was like, still no clue. Maybe we should go get a beer and talk about this. And so we did. We chatted about it. He talked about the organization, sort of what it was about. And I was really interested. And it was about the same time that like the Dan Brown books were really popular. And of course, they were steeped in a bunch of lore. Um, so he's like, "You got to read these books. They're really good." And so I read the Dan Brown books. And then I'm like, all right, so one, I really like the thought of this organization. Like, it's a community service thing. Ever since leaving the military, it's a place for that brotherhood that, you kind of miss when you're out of service, you're just doing normal stuff in day-to-day life. And then I looked at, all this crazy fiction. And so it's either one of two things, worst case scenario, I'm going to join a really good, organization with like-minded individuals and do good work for my community. Best case scenario, like I get to see the Holy Grail and like we're protecting the world's secrets. So you just never knew, right? But it worked out really great. It ended up at the worst case scenario, but it was the best thing possible. So.
Well, that's amazing. So that was here in California that your friend got you interested, or?
So he was from Boston, and so I actually, this is a long story actually. So I decided I was going to petition a lodge, and I just moved back to California. I was living in Manhattan Beach, and so I looked up the local lodge. I came in, I had a dinner, and like so many people from beach cities, I walked in the door and was met by Ralph Kussner.
Yeah.
Worshipful Ralph, ushered me very quickly to a table, and I sat down with John Bauer and Jim Nishikawa and Ralph, and we had dinner, and they talked up Masonry. And this is back before we kind of made you earn your application. So like I had a signed application before I left the door, ready to go. It was like, "Here's your check." And I did my investigations, and I got my letter from my first degree. I had my first degree, and then out of nowhere, the house that I owned in Colorado, my renters bailed on me, and I had to move back to Colorado for like a year or so. And so I was going to demit and join in Colorado, but nobody could figure out how to do the paperwork properly. And so I just forgot about it. Kind of, it just became like lower on the priority scale. I had turned my books back in. I thought I was kind of in limbo for a couple of years, and then I moved back. I was in Seal Beach for a year after I got done selling my house in Colorado, and then I moved up to Hermosa. And I was like, I never finished this lodge thing that I really wanted to do. So I just showed up to a dinner, and I was like, "Hey, I don't know what's going on. I was a member here once. It was before EA's paid dues." And so they were like, "Yeah, you're a member. Ralph's still your coach. Here's your books back. Go on through the lines." That was in 2010. So I started in 2007 was my first degree. And in 2010, I got the rest of my 3 degrees and walked through with that whole class.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I'm in that club of people that was met by Ralph. He called me back after I called the "To Be One Ask One" sign that's on Manhattan Beach Boulevard. And great news, Jim Nishikawa is turning 103 this year at the end of the year. So he holds the record for our oldest member at the moment. Tell me a little bit we have a bunch of guys that are in transition. They've sort of been caught by the COVID thing. So they're somewhere between their first and their third degree. Do you have any advice for them as they're waiting patiently?
Honestly, take the time to, when you're ready to get back into this, like Masonry is one of those things where I feel like things come to you at the right time of your life. And sometimes either the world does what it's done in the past years, and so you're forced to wait a bit, or life catches up with you, and you didn't have the time to really commit. But when you're ready to get back into it, I would say, whatever degree you were on, take the time while you're down and you have free time, or schedule a Thursday for yourself if there's nobody else there. Just review what you have learned. Think about how you could apply it to your life, or how, because like one of the things I always thought was really great about the degrees is because you teach through metaphor, everybody interprets it differently depending on their own background, their own experiences, and what they need at that moment in their life.
Right.
And so I remember going through the degrees and thinking about, oh, wow, that really impacts me because of this thing. But then you spend a couple years working on that thing, and that's not really your issue anymore. But if you go back, then learn the lectures, I was like, it's one thing when you're proficient, you go back to learn the lectures, and then you hear that thing again, you're like, actually, now this is the focus that really catches my eye because that's what's going on in my life now. So I would say, go back and review the degrees you do have, because you might find 2 years later, they might mean something different to you today than they did then.
That's true. I know. I remember you were one of the people who told me like not to be in such a rush. You and Worshipful Mike Heron,
Yeah.
to sort of get from the second to the third, right? To really enjoy the second degree. And we've got a couple of guys that have been on their second degree, working on that proficiency for a long time. And I talked to them like 6 months later, and they're like, and they stayed with their work. They kept with it, and they're like, it's really taken on so much deeper meaning, and they've taken the time to go and explore other things and find other references, and it's just made it so powerful for them, because so many people are in a rush to get to be a third degree, and and the second always seems to get short shrift. As an officer, that's like your first major lecture, as a senior deacon.
Well, and it's funny because the senior deacon lecture is like everybody that, they, as an officer, they're like, oh, that's the one, and people really love that lecture. I think the master's lecture in the second degree is highly, highly underrated. For those who have had a chance to either experience it or can go back and find it, read it in their books. If you don't have access to it yet and you're watching this video, you'll get it one day and then go look it up. But for those that do, the master's lecture in that degree has so many just eye-opening epiphanies about everything Masonry stands for, how it functions, and why it exists the way it does, that I feel like was really overlooked until I took the time to learn it as the senior warden,
as an
and then
officer.
also as master. And it's one of those things where there's so much depth. I still haven't gone back and respected the second degree nearly enough. There's a lot of information in there for those who have time and want to look. It's just a wealth of knowledge. And there's so many offshoots, like they were saying, everything from geometry to everything else. There's just so many different pieces that could be explored at its own depth.
Right. You're absolutely right. We could have jumped over the, like right into being an officer. Were you a regular third degree member of the lodge for a while, or did you go straight in?
No, when I joined, I went through, so like I said, I re-jumped in 2010, like in the beginning of the year. I was my, brand new Master Mason in the summertime. I got my proficiency before the end of the year, and Worshipful Paul Karch was going to be the incoming master the next year. And he was like, hey, do you want to be an officer? And I was traveling a ton for work, and I was like, all right, well, what position could I be where if I wasn't there, you could replace me like at the drop of a hat, because I'm going to miss a lot of meetings. He was like, Tyler. I'm like, I'll do that. Why not? So like I started as an officer right off the gate, and honestly, the dumbest position you could take as a brand new Master Mason is Tyler. You're always outside most of the time, during all the action. And so it halfway through my year as Tyler, the guy who was junior deacon kind of lost track, and he wasn't able to show up as often. And so I just kind of started stepping in as junior deacon. And then we had holes different places. And then Mike jumped and he went ahead and learned senior deacon because I wasn't ready to do it yet. And then I sat on the next year as junior deacon and just worked my way up.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. So, so from junior deacon, you went straight, or consecutively up to master.
Junior, senior, up to master.
What were some highlights of your year as master? Like, what were you looking forward to in all those years coming up to it? Were you able to accomplish what you were looking for? That's a bunch of questions, but
yeah, no, it's funny because you start going down this path of being an officer and working your way up to master, and there's a part of it where it's like you get there's the title, there's the lectures, there's that side. And then I think one of the things that was the best part of being master was honestly the other side of it, the unsung hero side of being master, which is a lot of work for anybody that's done it, they know, and you know, it's, you know, but there's the phone calls and there's the emails, there's all the different things that you actually get to play a role in shaping how the lodge functions and how we relate to all of our members. You know, you set the tone for the whole year, really. You know, your level of your control in the lodge room, the way that you interact with your brothers, you know, you can really take heated discussions back down. There's a lot of things that there were times where like I felt I've witnessed, you know, lodge meetings that got a little, you know, people were passionate about their beliefs and things, and I always wonder why nobody just stopped that. And so being able to do that and say, no, it's not how we talk to one another. Like we're brothers first, and we're passionate about our ideas, but we still all care for each other. We need to make sure we treat everybody with the same level of respect. We listen to every, you know, that kind of stuff. And like little things like that, I always thought were really nice. And then like randomly you would get emails from a past master or a member of our lodge for like 30 years that you've never met, who lives out of state, but they still read the trestle board. And they'll write you and be like, oh, I really loved your article. You know, I really love the different pieces like that, you know, and you guys are doing a great job out there. And they haven't seen any of it, but they've read about it and they see the things that we're doing.
Right.
And they really appreciate the fact that we've kept this lodge up and running and going. And I think throughout the time that I was master, sort of Mike Heron and myself and Joe Workman, we were working on sort of getting together a package to try to rebuild the building, to try to fix the building. But the biggest thing that I think that we had a hand in, that and I started all the way back with Mike Shimotek actually, was the right social functions to be able to, I mean, we had a big youth surgeons, and youth in air quotes maybe, but like in general, the average age of our lodge was older, and we started becoming a lot more relevant. So we were attracting younger members as well as retaining our older members and finding things that everyone could do together. And so that when the new people came in the lodge, they were excited, they were energized, they wanted to get involved. I don't feel like I was good enough at getting people where they needed to go to really just, so they dove in and they had the projects that really fit them. I don't think I knew everybody well enough. And I've always had an issue where I'm not great at delegating when something needs to be done. I'm not great. I'll just do it. Which is where Joe Workman was so much better. That's why I would love having Joe Workman after me, because he was the best senior warden, because I'd be like, we have to get this thing done and I'm going to show up at this time. And then Joe would do all the work of getting all the other people to help me when I showed up. So yeah, so no, it was a good learning experience. The learning to get through the politics and just the way to relate to people has actually changed the way I do that in my real life, outside of lodge as well.
Yeah.
As far as things I didn't get done, I'm confident there were a billion, because as you know, once you get in the chair, it's nonstop, and you spend so much time being master, like doing the day to day, that the things that you want to do far out are sometimes difficult to achieve. Sometimes things get dropped here and there. But in general, I mean, we were doing really low budget things that year, but we put together really fun, low budget events that I think people had a really good time at.
We did.
I think if I ever did it again, I'd try to plan those a little better. And now I have a better half that knows how to do all those things way better than I do. And so I feel like
got more resources.
I got a lot more resources now.
Awesome. Well, catch us up. What have you been up to since your year as master?
Ooh, I mean, since my year as master, I was involved on the hall, a couple of things. You know, we were doing different things, obviously, but then as a lot of people know, right before, like the year before COVID, so we had a daughter. She's amazing.
Over your shoulder.
There's a younger version of her here. I'll have to put a new version of her. She's now 2, sassy, funny as all get out. But yeah, she's a ham. I can't wait to actually bring her around so people can see her. I can't believe she's 2, and most people haven't really seen her except maybe like one picnic. So then after that, my wife unfortunately was diagnosed with breast cancer. So we kind of spent the better part of, year and a half in that battle. And now we're kind of on the other side. So in that meantime, I transitioned to another job within my company. We bought a house in Seal Beach, so we moved from our Torrance house to Seal Beach. Love the new neighborhood, so things are going really well. But yeah, so we're just, I'm excited just to get back involved.
That's great to hear. That's absolutely great to hear.
Yeah, everybody's healthy. Everybody's vaccinated, so we're all, we're ready to get back to our normal lives as much as possible.
That's fantastic. Well, one last question. During COVID, a lot of people have been reaching out to the lodge, trying to figure out, people are on the internet and they're doing their research. Maybe their grandfather, like you and me, was a Mason. They were always curious. They saw the books and aprons lying around, and other people are chasing the Holy Grail. Do you have any advice to anyone that's considering now reaching out to their local lodge?
I think it's a great time. I mean, we're at a point where people are, they're dying to get together again. There was a sense of family and fellowship that we had that was so strong at our lodge that I've been so busy with my personal life in the past 2 years between a new kid and then the cancer stuff and everything else. And honestly, like, I didn't notice it was gone until things relaxed. And, you and I started talking a little bit, just like either in person or online. I've been keeping up with, like, Joe Workman and a few other people throughout, but it's been sparse. And, we all remember every now and then, like, dude, I haven't reached out to people in a while. I need to send out at least 3 or 4 text messages. But like, it was every week. We saw everybody every week, just about. We were so busy as a lodge. And I missed that. I missed that part of my life. That was a really great outlet for me, just to be able to get away from everything else going on in life and just, hang out with good friends and, talk shop, hang out, smoke, joke, that stuff. So that part is going to come back, and people are really anxious for it. So I know there's a little bit of trepidation about everything going on in the world right now, but vaccinations are coming out strong. There's social protocols that are in place to keep everybody safe. And I feel like it's a good time, because at the end of the day, it would be worth it, because this, to me, there's a whole family that I've now, developed by walking through those doors the first time, that I didn't have in my life, and I would have never met through any other means.
I feel the same way. As an only child, I didn't know what it was to have brothers. Like, I'd see my cousins and I'd see them fighting all the time. Like, that doesn't look like fun. We're beating each other up. But now as a grown-up, I think I was 48 when I came to the lodge. And at that point in my life, like, still being an only child, finding a found family, was really, really powerful. And, just hearing you say that word family several times, we really have that. Even in our old broke down clubhouse, and even when we were sort of in exile, when we were, when El Segundo took us in, when we didn't have a place to meet. If anything, I think that kind of forged the family even tighter, because we were in familiar surroundings.
I think it proves that point that, home is where you make it, right? So wherever your family gets together, that's the thing. Like, I think about it a lot. It's in one of the lectures or chargers or whatever somewhere, where they talk about, masonry making friends out of people who otherwise may never have met. But honestly, I mean, I had multiple people not only at my wedding, but were signers of my wedding certificate that were lodge people. So it's like my dad and 2 guys from lodge signed my wedding certificate. Like, that's the family that I've developed, and like, I've only coached 2 candidates, but they're still great friends. And, all the people that have come up and like, that have either joined the lodge, become officers, been involved, and we've been at all these events, socially interacted, et cetera. And like, they're really great friends. And, life gets busy, you get away from that stuff sometimes, but like, when you ever sit to think about it, you're like, wow, I wonder how they've been. And so for me, I think people that are definitely coming in for the first time are going to see people super happy to be together again. It's going to be honestly, like, will be a lot less of the arguments, I think, up front. We'll give it time. They'll come back. But up front, I think it's going to be some really good get-togethers.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, and to everybody that's seeing this. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you soon.
Yeah, can't wait.
At the lodge. Thanks.
Take care.